I don't think I have anything down that quarter of my presentation, so
Okay.
it should be good.
Really? Good. Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay.
Debbie, she can hear.
Me here, Debbie?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Maybe it takes turn this on. Yeah. That's the right one. Yep, got it. Perfect. Pushing it around. Okay, good.
I'm eating peanuts I found at the bottom of my purse.
Yeah.
Yay!
Because I haven't had lunch.
Oh, here, let me ask you lunch.
This is pitiful.
Here.
No, I had one of these earlier too.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's board work session on capital facilities plan and communications plan update. And we will, Director, or Vice President Strauss is joining us over Skype. And we are still awaiting Director DeBruler, and Director Daniels is out on an emergency meeting tonight. So I'd like to call Dr. Watts to begin the work session, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, President Megan Aslan, members of the board, staff, and community. It is my honor to introduce our Chief School Operations and Academic Support Officer, Mr. Israel Vela, and alongside him, our Director of Capital Planning, Dave Buzzard, to begin this presentation as an update of our capital facilities plan and 5-year update. Israel?
Thank you, Dr. Watts, members of the board, our community, and our team. We're excited about sharing with you our 5-year capital projects plan and an update on a number of things that have been happening. As you know, things are going on out there, and so we're excited about sharing those with you today. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn over to Dave. Before I do, I wanted to just acknowledge Dave's work. He joined us in 2017, so as you know, walking into some of the work that was already in play, and so I know that I've had a wonderful opportunity to be able to see a lot of our projects that are happening, and also look at projects that are in play at this time. And so I've been more than impressed with his work and his team's work, and the work they've done with all of our communities, including working with our building administrators, because as you know, this requires a lot of communication. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Dave.
Thank you, Israel. President Vakastas, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Sally, again, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be here today to give my 5-year capital projects update. I know it's been a while. Karen's been asking, and I know Russ has been very adamant about looking for that. So as we go through, I'll just touch on some high points of what we're going to do. We're going to cover the 2006 capital projects. We will also cover the 2016 bond recap, which includes the 2016 capital projects within the bond. 5-year capital projects plan, which I've laid out for the next 60 months. which will show you in detail what we're going to do. We're also going to get into what some of the other districts are coming into is called forecasting our remaining bond dollars and how we're good with that. We've got some information to hand out from Morton's and Seattle Cost Index for construction for the last quarter. I've worked with them before, my prior experience before coming to the district, so I know them very well. We'll get into the 2018 construction levy after that, and then we'll open it up for questions. Okay, great. So on our 2006 remaining bond projects, as you'll see, we've narrowed it down to 5 remaining projects. And a lot of people have asked me, even I had the question to my team, Fred, when I first came here, I was like, that bond is 13 years old, and we still have projects. There are a lot of things that can happen in construction. There's a lot of things that can happen in the bond. And what it is that some of those projects get pushed to the end, and with either dollars funding, waiting for another project to finish so we can take contingency and keep moving contingency to the next project in priority. I am very happy to report that you'll see the asterisk, no asterisks, but the top and bottom note, all of the remaining projects will be able to be funded and finished through the 2006 bond with no outside additional capital funds. Our 2016 bond recap, you've seen this slide before. So our community voted in a $252 million bond issue. That bond issue encapsulates about 120 individual projects. Everything from building 2 new schools, 9 multi-purpose rooms, all the way down to as simple as replacing metal ramps on a school portable. So those are some of the details. The 3 all-site projects, you've heard me talk about asbestos removal and pipes, very important. We need to get that stuff out of there. Metal ramps at the dumpsters, we're trying to get those wooden ones out. I know that we've had some issues in the past with facilities getting those things moved around, so we're going to have some nice ones there with handrails, safety concern for our head custodians and people working in the building. And then our Promethean boards, which is awesome. As far as what I understand, Kent Meridian is fully up and running with all Prometheans. We have a little bit of TopCat, which is the audio-visual, the audio piece in the ceiling, but I'm proud to say that that's the first high school and it's done. Covington Elementary School, of course, is done. That's been complete. We are still a little bit of punch work. We all know it takes about a year or so to take care of a project, and that one maybe a little bit more, but you can bet that it won't come to the board for final approval until Dave Buzzard has signed off on it. The New Valley Elementary School and the new Academy campus, also listed as the 20 new classrooms currently right now on the bond, are the next 2 of what I say major projects that are coming up. So those 2 major projects that I just spoke about, I want to take you through the New Valley School. I'd like to start there. So as you know, we have secured the KMVA site to be our home of the New Valley Elementary School. And we're going to do something different with that. This district has never done what is called an early site package, except for maybe one small project 18 years ago that I'm in. So what that means is when we go in to build a project, you don't just go in with the whole project. We know that we have to demo a building, get all the site work, get a building pad ready, build the building, get it done, and then try to get it opened. That's what most school districts do. In my prior experience, working in senior housing and building in 11 different states all at one time, what I decided to do was go in and do the demo and the site work first while we're getting the rest of the permit and the drawings done, get our bidding phase done, and get that next contractor or even the current contractor that's on site to bid that work. So what happens is we're going to go from July to October, and we're going to demolish KMVA. We are going to get the building pad prepped up, and we also are going to do our geothermal wells, which we're very happy to. We use a lot of geothermal for our heating. It's very cost efficient and economical. Also works in the new energy program and plan that they have out, so we need to use that. So that will be done. Now the lag between October and May, you may see, that's for us to finish up with the city of SeaTac to get all the rest of the permitting done, get our phasing, our construction documents done, go to bid, and in May, we have a contractor on board that can hit the ground. There's beautiful pads sitting there ready. All the temporary erosion and sediment control is in. They do not have to fiddle around with any of that. They can go in there, start digging and building and building. I think that this is going to save us time, and I'm going to make sure that that timeline is not squandered away. We need to make sure of that. I'll switch over to the Academy campus. That's a little different. So if anybody knows where the old Panther Lake site is, we had a very thorough survey of the hazardous materials, and I hope no one's been in the building lately. It's very friable and non-friable. The actual outside of the entire building is asbestos on almost all but one building. The roof is asbestos, and most of the flooring is asbestos. We just bid that out, and I'm happy to tell you that my estimated cost for budget came in a third of what I thought it was going to be. We found a vendor, and you'll be approving that, hopefully, at the next board meeting, so we can get that abated and get that out of there. That's going to take place as soon as you give me the go-ahead. We're going to get that contractor on board. And then in July to October, we're going to be doing the same thing that we're doing at KMVA. We're going to tear down all the buildings. We're going to get the infrastructure in. We're going to get that ground settled, most of our major civil work done, all the infrastructure. And then at that point in time, we have nice new pads. Again, same thing. We're going to continue from October until May, until we can get through our permit, bidding, and then hopefully have a concurrent project. Both of those projects will run side by side with each other. It'll be two different contractors, I'm sure, and then we'll have those opening up at the same time. At the top, you'll see that there was some estimated construction cost. Those were generated through our last design estimates through our architect, and as you can see, about $40 million for the New Valley Elementary School and about $18 million for the Academy campus. Multi-purpose rooms. So Grass Lake and Park Orchard are finished. Cedar Valley, Sue's Creek are in full swing now, which Cedar Valley should be opening up very close. I know they're getting their final inspections now. Sue's Creek will be ready by the fall of 19. And then we have the next two are Pine Tree and Fairwood, which will be coming your way before the last board meeting of June 26th for a good bid coming in, so we can get started on that this summer. They'll finish up in late spring of 2020 and fall of 2020. And then Lake Young, Springbrook, and Meridian Elementary. I am happy to report that the architect that has worked on all of them from the top, except for Meridian, has done an extremely well job of getting those drawings tightened up, getting our scopes tightened up, and we like using the same architect because the lessons learned that we learned on one, we can save on another, and instead of starting around with a whole different group. I pulled the Meridian Elementary School from him. We have an architect that we've used in the district prior to me coming. They actually approached me. They had a little different concept of what they would wanted to do there. So I'll leave that up for a tease, but I'm excited to see what they'll do there. So. Can you click it, Karen? Oh. One more, sorry. This is dead on my end. Thank you. So the field projects, as you know, we have lots of field projects. Most of all of the middle school, secondary schools, we're getting field renovations on them for the 2016 bond. The first two were Kent Meridian practice fields. So that's everything behind the baseball field. We have a practice soccer field, practice softball field, and then a softball field final. And then in front of that is the KM synthetic turf baseball field. Those are looking fantastic. Actually, Israel was out checking up on me, which I love, out the other day and ran into our contractor. And I'm glad the contractor had good things to say about me, so that was nice to hear. But those are very, very skilled tradesmen that are out on that job. I'm very impressed with what they're doing. They take pride in their work, and that's always our best thing, is to make sure that we're getting the best product that we can get. So those will open up in the fall. The baseball, I put fall of 2019, but really the baseball will be ready around July. We won't have to worry about having to overseed, or because that's a synthetic field. So that'll probably open up a little bit early. Northwood Middle School, Fred Long has almost finished phase 1 out there. And that was the football field, and it actually got all new sod on it that we didn't even brilliant drill, which is to drill in seed and let it grow. So we just did rolled sod. Phase 2 of that project bids this spring, and then we'll finish up around 2020.
What is phase 2, David?
Phase 2 would be the softball and the baseball fields that are up on the, would it be the southwest side of that, of the school? So those will be the upper fields. That would be phase 2. As you know, last year we completed the Kent Ridge and the Kent Lake tennis courts, which looked great. And two things happened. These weren't pushed until like at the end of the bond. I wanted to bring Kent Meridian up. Israel and I had this conversation. It was like, okay, we got a brand new practice field. We're going to have a brand new turf field, and then people are going to walk by. The cracks are about that big through Kent Meridian tennis courts. And I'm like, yeah, no, let's do that. So I wanted to bring that up, and I think that's going to be great. We've already got a time laid out in July, and that's all being set in place. And then the whole equity, equality thing comes in. So, okay, now I've done 3. Do I wait 3 more years to do Kentwood? Of course not. Reach out to Joanne and Dave and said, hey, I'm going to do your tennis courts this year. Are you okay with that? Absolutely. So, and then the rest of them, Meeker through Matson, Cedar Heights, will all be just complete field renovations. And what those are is there's drainage and there's irrigation, and those systems are so antiquated, we have to really replace them entirely.
I have a question. We got a question at our community conversations, the last one, about girls softball, a field for girls softball at KM. And I'm not sure how a girls softball field is different than boys, I can imagine, but are we making accommodations anywhere along the line?
So that's a good question, and I'm glad you brought that up. So what we have done is the original bond only had turf for both fields, natural turf, grass. Israel and I, when we had the opportunity to think about having a prototype, there's a new material that came out through Shaw. It's the same material that is being placed at the Diamondback Stadium, less the organic coconut fill that they use. So we talked about that, and we're like, okay, is there something that we can maybe do a prototype about? So the prototype is set for the baseball, to make sure that the playing surface and that prototype as well. What we did, Karen, is we actually took, and we did not put synthetic on the softball at this time, but what we did is we did all the infrastructure, drainage, and we did everything around perimeter, concrete, post, everything. So what that is that when we do have bond dollars, that wasn't in the bond, and we came to the board and we asked if we could do that project as a prototype. If we do at the end have some monies that we can do that, it will be 1/3 of the cost of having to do that entire field all over again. So what we did is we put the infrastructure underneath of it. So now all we have to do is scrape off the first 11 inches. We won't track it through the field because we have an exit right by the bus garage, and we can just bring that in. And we're looking at that cost is probably about $500,000.
The other positive is, that's an area that I went out and took a look at. We actually had to raise it about 1 foot.
It is.
And so we already are going to be able to not have to cancel softball games because of the drainage is already far superior than what any of their fields are. And as Dave mentioned, we already have the border, the perimeter there to just simply skim and lay down our synthetic. So it looks great.
Absolutely. HVAC, or the heating, ventilation, air conditioning projects. So we have boilers at 24 of our sites, and everybody knows the old boiler. Israel knows it better than any, with him being a principal at Meridian Elementary. I've been down in that boiler room, and I wouldn't go down there again. So what we've tried to do, and we're starting it at Sunrise, and we're starting at Neely O'Brien. So last year, we took those 2 buildings that were on the bond, and we said, okay, what can we do with this? So individual heating and cooling units inside the classrooms, fantastic idea. There's a lot of districts that do it. It economizes things, It gets it down to our maintenance. It's not going down into a rusty old cellar, you know, with all these banging pipes and everything. Everything is nice and clean. It's right there. It's better filtration of air. It gives our teaching and learning environments a pep, as far as what I would say. Gives it a better complexity. So we'll start with those two over the summer. So think about it. I'm going to take all the heat and any air conditioning and every bit of air movement out of the building. I better get it done that summer. So it is very, very important that every single one of those jobs that has anything to do with, people think that, oh, you know, we might need a school, or we might need a multi-purpose room, or those things right there, you better have your pulse on the contractor at all times. So, and we will have that.
You said you'd move your office into there.
You know what, Dr. Watts, I think I made you lots of promises about that, right? Promises made, promises kept, right? So we will definitely do that. But as you can see, we're excited to have those units out of there, those boilers. We're looking at 40-year systems that we're replacing, 45, where a boiler lasts about 20 years, a chiller lasts about 15. So, you know, we're just taking the complexity level down of maintenance and then adding in the technology and maximizing our envelopes are just incredible. Can't say enough about it. Important to us, important to our work. Fire alarm and sprinklers, again, no more or less important. Fire safety is always a big item. When we talk, some of these schools, the systems that are in there, were in there since 1946, 66, 82. We have schools that have 3 different monitoring systems in them. It's been a mirage of different systems. So as we go through now, Jenkins Creek was the first one that's actually a completed project. And our project specialist, Linnell Mooney, not even a project manager, not a director, not a project planner. She actually did that job. She managed that job, started that job, and very, very proud of the work that she did there under some close observation of Fred and myself, but I just wanted to toss that out there. So these are important, and I'm glad to get those done through the summer of 2023. As you see, the maintenance building is being pushed down to the very end. That was a conscious decision by my part. I feel that there are systems that are in place. As long as they're working, they're functioning, why fix something that's not broke? But again, you know, the schools, there's a lot of people in there. The maintenance building has about 9 to 12 people in it, centrally located, so it's just something that we did. And then we get into the individual school projects. So I talked a little bit about the Promethean boards with the TopCat sound systems, which if anybody's been in one of those rooms with the TopCat, I invite you to go in, put the lanyard around your neck, turn on the speaker, and then start singing your favorite song. It's fantastic. I do it all the time. So I would definitely do that. It's remarkable. I remember Dr. Watts and Tashawn and I had to feverishly come to his office one day. He was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. 4 speakers? We're not putting speakers on all, because he had to. So we said, hey, go to it and look at it. And it is. You can put it on there. It is omnidirectional.
Yes.
So it's kind of top of the, it's kind of state of the art, and Wi-Fi, wireless, Bluetooth. It's fantastic. So anyway, and then the rest of those classrooms, the science conversions, window replacement. It's been a big one at Kent Meridian. I have been at many a board meeting with the science teacher. Cannot remember his name. Talking about the windows there, so I'm very happy to get those taken care of. We have 2 packs that are going in, health room remodel, very important, main entrance, and then the new library multimedia center. And you'll notice that at Scenic Hill, that will be, if Debbie were to move over, that's actually going to take a little over a year. That project will take a little over a year. It's probably going to take us about 1.5 years to get it designed, because it's going to be in the courtyard, and it's going to take a lot of coordination. That one right there will be.
Karen, do you mind just showing the estimated
Yeah,
finish date?
it's
Move Debbie
oh,
up.
sorry.
Look up, Debbie, look up.
And then,
Or
and
taking
then
it
click
down.
one,
Or do you go back?
and then click or back
Can you
one.
go back one slide?
Go
Or
back
go
one slide.
back one slide. Or forward one slide, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, forward.
Forward one slide, please.
The Scenic Hill Library is in a portable right now, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
So I can tell you that even with the multi-purpose rooms being closed together and what we've had to do with reorganizing traffic and parent pickup and dealing with all of those provisions, this will be the most impactful job in our district. Because it will be in a courtyard, it will take them staging somewhere outside, going through, and coming out. So just level of importance there.
Is the Pine Tree, has there been any discussion on the cafeteria?
Oh, the multi-purpose room?
No, the cafeteria for the Pine Tree Elementary?
Yeah, so that, the multi-purpose room would be the cafeteria.
Oh, that would be.
Yeah, absolutely, and we go to bid for that mid-May. So you'll see Pine Tree, and you'll see Fairwood come in front of you very soon. Awesome. So this next one is it's a little bit of a it's a great talking point. This is one when we at the beginning of it I talked to you about Mortensen Construction Services. Again, they've been in the Pacific Northwest for quite some time. They're highly vowed to be. They have a good pulse on what's happening in the trends in construction. So this slide really is what can we do and how can we help everybody, including ourselves, our community, our district, and each school with forecasting our remaining bond dollars. There are lots of things that we can do. The three top ones that I've thought through with talking to a lot of my constituents out in other districts is that we really have to create great scopes of work. We need to try to get our designs and our plans down to a minimum. We do not have as many change orders. We don't have any unforeseen conditions, which people say, how can you not have an unforeseen condition? I'm going to make a point very clear. This is a good one. I'm going to go up to KMVA, I'm going to take a hammer and I'm going to punch a hole in a block wall next week. If there's any vermiculite in there, which is a type of insulation, we will not be able to pummel the CMU and the concrete and leave it on site. We would actually have to go into each cell and vacuum it out. It's cheaper for me to just have it hauled off site than to save the $1 million to pummel it, to leave it on site as fill. So coming up with unforeseen conditions can be as easy as Dave walking into a school with a hammer. I'm going to do this in a closet somewhere. Don't be alarmed. I'm going to do it in a closet somewhere where children aren't. But these are the things that we have to get into to minimize our unplanned swells in our project budgets. Building relationships with neighboring K-12 districts. I can tell you right now, Highline, Lake Washington, Puyallup, I have a really good relationship with Puyallup. I know 3 or 4 of the people out there. I have friends that work in that district as well in their capital planning and facilities team, and I reach out to them a lot to get feedback, finding out what they're doing, and I can tell you that at first I thought, you know, it's like, is there any untold secrets that districts have that won't tell their districts? And I'll tell you, I've been absolutely amazed at what information they will share. And I do the same back to them because I think it's a very good way. It's also going to be a good way for us to save dollars. And lastly, this is something that I think that, you know, when we get down to it, Israel and I have talked about this, that this is really, this last bullet is going to be a group discussion. And the group discussion is when we get down to adjusting our project priority for planning, we know as we get down through the end of the bond issue, just like with 2006, what are we going to do if we come to that area? Like Seattle's not building 2 schools, Tacoma's not building 2 schools, Bethel's not building 2 schools. We are definitely going to build our schools. We're definitely going to build our multi-purpose rooms. We are definitely going to do everything that we need to do to promises made, promises kept. But with escalation, as it is, and the piece in front of you is the most important part. And that's where we get into the what do we put at the end. So in 2012, Fred had started the bond pricing. It went to 2015, and when we knew we were going to go back out to 2012 bond, didn't pass. So in 2015, they took those numbers and they put a 19.5 escalation scale to them. And that will go up. I'm going to click to my next one. So what they did is they took 19.5% and they added it to each individual project that was on the individual project bond. So you think 120 projects on there, if that was, $1,000, now it's, $1,900. So that's what they did. They took the percentages and they just did what they needed to do. That was great, except for when 2016 hit, 2017, 2018, as you can see, Mortison, 4.5% to 5% every year compounded since 2015. So if you go 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and you take 5 times 5.5, doesn't take long to know that we have already somewhat exhausted the contingency that is based into each individual project. So let's get to point number 2, which is our contingency bucket. Now, this was a bucket of contingency that was built outside of each individual project, and this has, I think the value on the $252 million was a $10 million contingency bucket. So that is outside of each individual bucket. This was to absorb any mostly unforeseen conditions, agency and code, and Russ, I know you and I have had some lots of discussion about why we have to replace a road if we're just building a small shed. So those are things that we always have to try to minimize. So capital planning is dedicated to preserving that bucket. We know that within creating better scopes, within doing district work, within making sure that we're designing for what the needs of our students, our staff, and our community are, what can we do to reduce and minimize added cost? Because if we've already expended the 19.5, then there's 10 million left in the contingency bucket to finish out everything, again, everything that comes through. So how do you do that? Well, you look at other funding resources. Last point, we have to capture and retain as many bond dollars as we can. So there's non-bond. We're going to sell Covington, the Covington sale. Whatever, that's non-bond. So those are non-bond dollars. Every month, every quarter, every year, we get impact fees from Kent, from King County. Those are impact fees that we get in for having the impact on the county, impact on the community. They actually put that, and that's in a fund. And then we have state match fees, which we had state match at Covington, which was fantastic. So state match, if anybody know what that is, we expend our budget and state match are in our budget, and then once we get through a threshold of how much we spend to a certain percentage, now every time we get an invoice in from the contractor or vendors, we send that out. That money also goes to the state, and then the state comes around and gives us a nice check, which is fantastic. So that's called state match. I am happy to report that we will get some semblance of state match for the new Valley Elementary School, and that is news to everyone at this table, because no one knew that until I did a few days ago. So we are very happy to know that the state is going to pitch in some dollars for that school. And again, it's these bullets, these last 2 slides, is really for the last 4 words at the bottom of it. And we made promises, and we need to keep promises. So promises made, promises kept, holds true. But there's a lot of districts that have made that same promise, and they haven't been able to do that. I want to make sure that we, as a community, as a board, as an organization, do what we can to make good, right decisions. And I'm all up for anybody or anything to get us through to that point, because I'm committed to making sure that those 4 words we end with at the end of the bond. Okay, capital levy. Passed last year, $146 million technology and capital construction levy. $75 million of that's coming to us, and there's a lot of those are critical repairs. Lots of painting, roofs, even down the blinds and carpet. Couple of actual new roofs. Daniel Elementary is actually going to get a brand new roof out of this one. It's about 6 to 8 years past its lifespan. We will start some of those projects in June. Our funding should hit about the end of April. I'm in constant communication with Ben over in finance to find out when those dollars actually land. We are not waiting for that. There's a gentleman sitting behind me here. He's our new project planner, and he got dumped with about 56 projects on his desk last week. He's probably giggling back there, smiling at me, because it doesn't cost any money for us to go out and at least get started on it. Let's get started on the surveys and get pricing, and these are all things. We don't need to wait until we have money to get started. So let's get started now, that way we can finish earlier. And then I did want to put, in case anybody didn't know, the levy was actually organized very well, and I was very happy to see that. And I believe, Israel, you had some input on how it was organized. So support physical activity and community, that's for like if there was any fields out there that need to be done, or something that has to do with a new play structure, things of that nature. Reduce operating cost. Our entire building management energy system is all based on technology, and technology is going in and removing controls where somebody has to come in now, and let's say we want to take that thermostat, move it up or down. I can do that from my smartphone. So that's part of it. Improve safety. These are all the nice ramps that we're putting up and things of that nature. Improve health is going in and cleaning and painting and revitalization of certain areas in the schools. Enhancing learning opportunities, getting some better lighting in, creating better spaces with anything that could be. Could it be carpet? Could it be blinds? Could it be new doors, new hardware? What can it be from a physical plant scenario to be able to do that? And then improving, enhance facility operations, and then improve accessibility. And that brings it to questions.
Yeah, I have a couple. I don't know what kind of play structures are up at KMVA for the K through 5, 6 kids, but are they movable to, I mean, do they need to be moved at all for
Yes.
the new building?
So-
And are they good enough to be kept?
That is a great question. So yes, Northwest Playgrounds is our ultimate vendor. It is a sole source vendor that we go out to. They are through KCDA. They have done this for many, many, many years. Chris Garvey actually took the business over from his father 2 years ago when I started. And Chris has been actually fantastic to work with. Yes, we will be moving the play structure from KMVA to the back of KPA temporarily.
I was wondering about that.
So the new matting that we'll need, which is the play surface underneath, so that matting is 1.5 more expensive than the play structure itself. 1.5%, so it's 100, it's 1.5 times the cost of it. Sorry. And, whoops, sorry about that. So, yeah, the whole project's $43,000. Let's just say that, Dave. But we will be able to take that structure, or the padding from that structure, when we build the new at Old Panther Lake. I would not want to take that structure over there, because moving it once is okay, and it's the viability of that is good. But Israel and I have, we've worked on Park Orchard when we did an inclusive piece of playground. And to be honest with you, the schools get to pick their own playground equipment. That's one thing that people always ask me. Who picked the playground equipment? Principals do. Their staff does. That's what they get to do. That's part of their budget. There's only one caveat from this point on. They have to put a piece of inclusive in on every single playground. As a matter of fact, on our next bond, I think that would be a great thing for our community to have. One piece of inclusive or more at each one of our schools. So that will be able to be moved.
Just to add one additional piece we did at Park Orchard, that matting is hugely expensive, as you know, from a safety perspective. So anytime we can either shore it up, which we did at Park Orchard, we actually, part of the project included us being able to shore up some of the matting that was there. So we extended the life of it rather than let's wait till the next time, we'll wait for it to deteriorate, so.
Absolutely.
That's also crucial.
And we have other, we have projects, other buildings in the district right now that there are some need for some replacement pieces. They're basically all the same size. They're 2x2 pieces, about 1.5 to 2 inches thick. So when we vacate and go to Old Panther Lake or the new Academy site, Guy DeMar and our maintenance team will be able to, in grounds, we'll be able to pull all of that up and be able to go take that and replace pieces that need to be done. So really, we're paying for it, but we're going to pay for it there, and we're going to take it to other places that are need.
Good. And the other thing about the old Covington site, the property that's for sale, we know that Covington, the city council wants to buy part of it. So we're putting the whole thing up for sale, and they get the right of first offer for the part that they want, and then we have the rest left to sell to somebody else, or we're going to be left not selling that part, or do we know what's going on?
So we are already through the right of first offer for the first half. We have split that parcel.
Right.
Okay, so they are going to purchase the land in the building that's in the front. And then as soon as that deal goes through, I'll be coming back to you again to ask to go ahead and sell the rest of it.
Okay.
It's not large enough for us to put anything on there.
Right.
We've talked in strategic about other things that we may or may not need. I'm not too sure if that would be the applicable place to put anything for the district at that time. I feel that maybe we get that resource out in cash to have non-bond dollars to do other things with.
How big is that spot, Dave?
I believe it's about 8 acres. I believe that's what it is.
On average, less.
10 to 12 for an elementary school. Yeah. And we
Is that
kicked a lot of different
early-
things around, you know.
Early childhood spot, too. I was wondering about another early childhood center for that part of the district. I don't know, just throwing that out there.
To consider, sure.
Yeah,
So,
good question.
Sure. Actually, we'll stick on the new schools. So that for because you're looking at the Old Panther Lake site, go put the Academy campus on there. Is it going to fully utilize the space that's there? I know that because the Old Panther Lake was, had a lot of open space, and I don't know if we're going to use all of it for the Academy campus or part of it and still have some open, or if that's planned or not.
Yeah, good question. And I'm actually going to be I hope we can find some time before June to be able to do that presentation. Our architects are actually almost ready to do a presentation to you for both sites, so I'm happy to report that. What we are going to do is, yes, we are going to keep the buildings sort of in the same location. Our pre-application meeting with the city last week, if anybody knows, they're actually going to make a double turn lane going east to north on 208.
oh,
So that actually triggered us having to move the building back a little bit because we didn't know that they were going to encroach into the right-of-way, which is the sidewalk and the trees and half the parking lot that we have. So it's a good thing we had a meeting, which we always have to do. But yes, the field is going to stay the same. We are going to open up or have the possibility of opening up, instead of retention and doing a chamber system or a detention vault, the city is actually going to allow us to go into the current detention pond and actually make that bigger. They're going to allow us to do that. They wouldn't do that for anybody else, but Ozzy at the City of Kent said that since you already have it, dig it out a little bit bigger, make it a little bit longer, and he's going to be the reviewing officer, and he'd allow us to do that because he wants us to be able to save as much space as we can on site. So yes, we will. The site that's proposed for there now, we do have an additional space that could be built onto it, a phase 2. And that would be about all we would want to put on that site unless we got into dollars, because anytime that you build outside and you just have raw ground, now we're talking infrastructure, moving fire, water, sewer, easements that go through there. There's a lot of utility that runs through that space.
The other positive thing there from our city partners, they're very excited about us moving forward with the demoing.
I'll bet.
We've had a lot of issues there, but I will say this, is that we've also utilized that building in ways that we've partnered with not only City of Kent, but Tequila and others, where they use it as part of their trainings. So, but it's now at a point where it's it's not even good for that.
Yeah.
So our partners are excited about us
Exactly.
demoing.
And just lastly, you have to, I'm excited for that building. I'm excited for all buildings, but that building especially, just the ability to have the flexibility, to have equal importance of all the other buildings. It's going to be innovative. It's going to be a great hub for our community. I can't talk enough about what that building can be. I think that building is programmably, I think that building can be anything that we want it to be.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And then there was, it was on the list of other things, I forget where it is, Kent Ridge and Kentwood Performing Arts Center. And so I remember a question came up in one of our community conversations about different venues. So I want to get the first thing of what goes into Performing Arts Center. So what kind of structures and facilities are in there?
Right now,
In general, or
so
right now?
usually it's a stage with auditorium. It has a vestibule area or an area outside for congregation at first. Lighting systems. Those are the kind of things that would go into it. A lot of it is just upgrade, and what we're going to do is upgrade in seating. I know that Kent Ridge needs a whole new floor. I do know that. I've been out there several times. So those are the kind of things that we build them for. Before we even go to do those two, I'll be sitting down directly with our stakeholders out there and the rest of the community, according with what we need. What do we want those to look like? Here we have an opportunity to do something that could be flexible, innovative. What do we want to look like? The issue will be is, again, if we go back 4 slides, it's keeping that scope down to what our budget dollars are for. Do we want something that's better? Absolutely. And is there a lesson learned that we can learn by going out to other districts, which I'm a part of, to keep those lessons learned? But those are the items that usually are in those.
Other key pieces are the lighting, sound,
Yeah.
and then ease of use for performances in that,
Yeah.
the back areas, so those are also key pieces.
Yeah.
Okay. 'Cause I think they were talking about the floor, like the floor quality was what was mentioned.
It was.
And so when you mentioned meeting with stakeholders, is it the buildings like staff that use it, or is it people who go to the school? When it comes to who has input into what goes into that space?
Good question, Russ. At this point, I would not know all of those players at this point. I would start off with the school. The school knows, and the facility use people know who are using it. I am not opposed to having input from anybody. I mean, our community is part of our schools. Our schools are part of our community. I think that what we need to do is make sure that everybody is covered or at least has a voice. And I will make sure that that happens for anybody that's in the performing arts world.
Yeah.
They should come, and they should be a part of that, for sure.
And then, kind of switching topics a little bit, but what we've talked about before, reducing unforeseen changes, because we've seen a lot of city and utility, I don't know if it's code enforcement or if it's just changes in what they require of us. And I think you mentioned a pre-planning meeting, or whatever you mentioned before about
Pre-application meeting?
Pre-application meeting. Are we getting more dialogue with cities to do that? Now, obviously, Kent's the main one, and Covington's there too, but we're talking about SeaTac, we're talking about some of these other cities that may not deal with us that often. Are we getting those kind of meetings going with them when we need to?
Not part of my presentation, but I'm glad you asked that question. I have now quarterly meetings with Kent, City of Kent, and Covington. And the reason why, what they're planning teams.
Yeah.
And the reason why I wanted to do that is I get to come down to them 4 times a year or more, and whenever they need it. And I can hand them a list, no budgets, but I can hand them a list of projected times and things that I'm going to start. That way they can get it on their list to make sure that they know that these are coming. Again, when we talk about the one thing that holds up a project worse than anything is you submit for a permit, you get a correction letter back, and if it is a correction letter that's that long, it takes 3 times that long to get those corrections back to them. If you have that pre-application meeting and you get to ask those questions at the beginning, you'll probably get a correction letter that's that big. It takes about a week to go turn it back around, and our consultants and our architect. So my pitch is to get involved with the permit and the planning team at all organizations that are around us, and then I can have that dialogue with those people individually.
Good, thank you.
It is.
And it's just something that when it comes up, it's like, oh, I know you can't foresee everything, but this is more on the city side, or so shouldn't they be able to tell you, you're gonna need to spend $250,000 to do this, regardless of, or on top of whatever else you're doing. And having those, right, because I understand, right, if you submit your permit, you get this correction, well, then you have to do that before you can do anything else. And then we're talking a cascading effect potentially on delaying future projects.
It is.
As we go.
And I've said this before in meetings, and I'll say it again. The largest issue that we have to date with any agency out there is that we have a plan review. We get a permit. They've reviewed our drawings extensively. Correction letter came back. We fulfilled it. We start to build. An inspector who is not a plan reviewer comes to the site and says, no. And you're not getting your building until you satisfy me. Well, I want to take that guy and say, let's drive into your office and talk to somebody, because
Right.
somebody looked at this. You can't do that. I would love to do that, but you can't. So what we do is we have to work with them. And one of the things that I try to work with, and this is part of my quarterly meetings with all the agencies that I'm working with now, is I've asked that question in open forum at their table. And I think they're a little bit shocked when I ask it, but it is a valid question.
Yep.
And what they say is, when you have those issues, start to call me now. So I'm starting to get some good names and numbers of people to call.
That was all my questions. Thank you.
Questions, Debbie?
Yeah, Maya, I can barely hear you. I can hear everybody else, but not you. So, on, I had a couple of questions on the new school sites. So I remember when we did Old Panther Lake, when we were building the new Panther Lake, I thought there was some sort of something that we had to sign or do that said that we wouldn't use that for a school again. So is us tearing it down and repurposing it for a new building, does that still keep us where we need to be?
That is a great question, and yes, we could not use the current building. Once we demo it and we move out through that, it's incredible. You would think the same number will be at OSPI. It'll be the same number, but it'll be a different building. I'm a little confused about that as well too, but I'm not trying to get into the whole OSPI world for sure.
Great. And then I'm a little curious why the Academy campus is going to cost us so much less than the elementary school.
That is a good question. So that estimate is an estimate. That is the estimate. I think that that estimate is low. We've already talked about that. The other reasons why it's going to be a little bit lighter is we already have the existing utility up there. We're only building about 60,000 square foot, where the new building's about 80. So there's not too much of a difference in square footage. It's all about infrastructure, keeping on where we already have a site and not having to improve the site for the veracity of the 8.7 or 10.8 acres that are there now.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, I didn't have any questions other than I appreciated all the questions.
Yes.
Sorry.
So I just have one question, that is, what are we doing, I guess, in a way to communicate this to students? I know that just in general, this probably isn't the most, definitely not the most important thing that a student wants to know about. But for example, at Kent Ridge, I took drama class in 9th grade or whatever, and the teacher would talk about, oh, I want this to change in the pack. Oh, I want this to change. Oh, and the levy that's coming up, this is supposed to be on the projects. And then she told that to one period, and then she tells that to all the other periods, and she tells that to all the other, everyone in the drama program. Students want to know, you know, what's going to happen at their individual school. And the only thing I can think of right now is that all this stuff is on the website. And I'm just wondering, the other thing is just how do even students can figure out what's going to happen at their own schools?
That's a great question. So on the levy, for sure, and do you want to answer some of those? But I can answer as well. We communicate regularly, Melissa's team and I, with where we are with projects and updates. They put it on the promises made, promises kept. And then the website also is now concurrent. If you get on the new website, if you click to school and you go down, it has all the bond projects of everything that's going to happen per school, and then by levy per school.
Oh, okay.
So it takes a little bit of just being intuitive to go in, just do a couple of drop boxes down, and you can see all the information is there. Now, what's not there is a time period, and just so that you know, Austin, construction schedules, and just like this meeting right here, we have to kind of keep our bond fluid. There are certain things that may become critical that we want to push up, and there are certain things that will be non-critical that we want to push back. So those are kind of what we need. As soon as we know, again, this is a 60-month or a 5-year plan, so everything that's happening on here is happening in the next 5 years, bar that there's nothing as an emergency that may want to come up.
Also wanted to share a great question is we've been working with our communications and public affairs team on, as you heard, promises made, promises kept. We are working on communicating in a more succinct way on really what's happening, because I think as we move to continuing to go out for bonds and levies, our community needs to know, what is it that we have been doing? At what stage is it? Did we come in where we had estimated in terms of costs? What are the great things people are saying about it, and what does it look like? And so with the help of Melissa's team and Dave, I've asked Dave to look into a few districts. I'm sure Dr. Watts, what some districts have done to do that, and it would be great if I was a classroom teacher and had that question.
Absolutely.
I would definitely go to something like that because it's more interactive and it's more, explains really where we are. Better than that, I can share the great things with my teammate or my classmate. So we're looking into that with Melissa's team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think visual updates is where we want to head, but how do we keep that up to date and accurate? And as far as student overload, this year we did include students in the new and the blue, but for only for secondary students, and we're only seeing about a 4 to 5% open rate on those monthly emails. So we pick and choose, so we don't overload them, because we also have our safety newsletter and our promises made, promises kept, and then our board newsletter. So we are piloting with just the new and the blue, which is district-wide information versus topic-specific, like promises made, promises kept. But yes, the by school, by funding source is available to the entire public and students.
Good question.
Thank you for the question.
And I think this presentation going on our website, I think that would be helpful for folks. My only question, and these were great questions that were asked, is regarding top program and how we're finding if the accommodation has been sufficient, or are they running out of room, what the situation is now with top. And have we kind of projected long-term how that would look like, given the space available or that'll become available?
Take a stab, you want to?
We let you, we actually had our one-to-one today, and that actually topic came up, so I'll let Dave talk a little bit about that.
So I'll answer that question. I want to go back. Since I've started here, every topic that have come up of like, man, I wish we could. I have been keeping that list for over 2 years. And you know what that list is going to turn into? Our next bond issue. That's what that list is going to be. Because I think I'm hearing the important things of the community thing. To answer your question specifically, yes, that program has exploded. There's no doubt about that. My wife worked there for 1.5 years in that building. We converted a storage room into a classroom. Does Dave think that they need another building? Absolutely. I think so. But I guess it's the programming and how that mission statement is derived. But yes, you know, there's a lot of things that you can do with that building in the program. But yes, as far as the current condition of it, it was basically built for about 60 students, 50, 60 students. And when you think the, you know, the one-on-ones, the three-on-ones that are in there, 85 staff, up to 90 staff for 65 to 70 students is not a bad ratio conservatively of what the program that they're doing in there.
Given the program, some of our students are off campus at some point during that.
They are, and it's, and that's the other thing that comes through. I mean, the fire marshal had come, somebody had, I got a question when we turned a storage room into a classroom, and they were like, hey, how do you do that? And I said, that's easy, I added a window. And they're like, oh, was that a fire escape? No, none of them are, because it's a fully sprinklered building, we don't need one. So, but these are kind of questions that you ask, you have to have that knowledge and that consistency behind that. But yes, with the program going out, there's a lot of work study. There's students that come here to the campus. It's fantastic. And I just found out the other day that 2 of them got jobs at Goodwill where my wife was working. So these students went out and got actually full-time jobs there. So it's fantastic. I think that program can be a whole lot more. I'd love to talk about it for hours, but you let me know. I'd be more than glad to get involved. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
the presentation. It's really helpful.
You're very welcome. No, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yes, as we thank you, President Aslan, members of the board, thank you, Dave, and to our capital facilities plan, from that to a communications and public affairs update, and I would call on Melissa Larman, Communications Director of Public Affairs, to begin our communications plan update. Melissa.
Thank you, Dr. Watts, and President Aslan, members of the board, colleagues. I'm excited to talk about communications. It feels like a while. We got a little off our first of the month for them, but refreshed after spring break. Karen's going to pull something up for our next conversation. And was inspired by some conversations over the past few weeks. And while I don't have cute students to read books in Spanish to you, or crepes, or anything like that, I do have something for you to start off our conversation today, rather than just diving into the data and kind of some next steps. So I'll pass those out first to start the conversation. Well, there's numbers.
Look at math every day.
Uh-oh, we're making an estimate.
So, you do get to take these home with you, and Debbie, I'll make sure you get one as well. I have one for Denise. And
Oh, my.
I will explain these as we go. So, your bag of beads that you have in front of you. I heard Dave mention it, and I was excited. And I want to start off our conversation because a lot of what we talk about and what your focus has been, and what you've been truly committed to as a board with this communication plan, and what it's coming to almost an end, as we're in April, mid-April now. It's time for assessment and accountability. It's really about voice. And so I wanted to take just a few minutes to talk about voices. And so these beads in your bag, each individual bead, represents 100 voices. So we're going to just talk about the voices. And we're going to talk about who are we listening to and what voices are missing. So I have a couple jars here. This jar represents 150,000 voices. Our school district encompasses 7 municipalities. The city of Kent alone has a population of over 127,000. These represent the approximate 150,000 residents in our district boundaries that may or may not have students attending our schools. They may work in our schools. They may be people that work in our schools. They may be registered voters who approve our bonds and levies. Or they may just live near our school buildings. So these are the 150,000 voices in our community. These beads, these beautiful, diverse voices, represent 25,400 unique perspectives and voices that each and every day are students. They bring their own experiences, circumstances, expectations, their dreams, their needs, their languages, their values, their cultures, and their priorities every day to our schools. This jar represents 18,000. And this is the same amount of beads that you have and can take home with you. The 18,000 beads represents the 18,000 families approximately that each day entrust to us in Kent School District the families, the 18,000 families that sends their students to our schools. These are the voices, the many cultures, languages, and races that we need at the table for decisions that impact everything from curriculum to building design and everything in between. So these represent the families. And these, small but mighty, standing next to these other jars, these beads represent your staff. These are your 3,400 KSD, Team KSD members. These are the staff of KSD that every day are serving the families and the students in the KSD. And I'm proud to tell you that we surpassed 4,000 volunteers, approved volunteers, 4,048 approved volunteers this school year alone today through our VIP system. And so there's even more of those beats. And that's super exciting. But when we think about the voices that we need to be listening to, whether it's a decision about which photo to use in a newsletter, or the cover of Connected, or policy and procedures, or whatever decision it is that we're making, small, large, the impact of all of those communities, I think it's really important for us to consider. And this is an exercise that our team in communications and public affairs reminds ourselves of. These sit in my office, and we in executive cabinet have walked through this, because it can be easy in our day-to-day to not remember how many voices there are across the 72 miles in our district. And so I invite you to take these home, keep them at the dais, and just have this as a reminder of the beautiful, wonderful diversity in our district and the impact of each and every decision that we make when we think about the voices in our district. So that is my voices.
Great visual.
So, thank you. That's why I love my job. Okay. So not too much math, right? All right. Oh, yes. So now I'll pass these out. Thank you.
I'm just impressed you counted all of those beads.
Yeah.
Thousands, I'm like, wow.
So they're by hundreds. Okay, thank you. So for our agenda today, I would like to go through, we did the listening, and the numbers are there for you, so if you wanted to keep those in mind. And then we have a few communications plan updates that we need to go through. And then I'd like to come back to talk about our board community conversations coming up next month in just a few weeks. And then, of course, some regular data that we go through each month is available there. And then, of course, our upcoming events, celebrations, and deadlines until we meet again. So the first thing I would like to go through, speaking of voices, is continuing the conversation that we had last month about thought exchange. I went back to thought exchange after our last conversation. I'm not sure what time you have had to dig more deeply into what that tool is and what that could look like, but of the 3 opportunities that I presented at our last conversation, that was the one that had the most kind of, I'm not sure what that means, what does that look like? So I went back to them and said, give me something else so I can help explain this better. So I have a short video that we can watch that does a much better job of explaining it than I do. So I'd like to play that for you now, and the link is also available. And I did send this to you, Debbie, and I sent it to Denise as well, so they can watch it.
Yeah, I have it.
Okay. And I think sound is good.
Hi there, my name's Andy from Thought Exchange, and I'm going to give you a short guided tour of our software and service in hopes of clarifying what it is we do, explaining how we do that, and explaining why that's important to you. Thought Exchange exists to bring large groups of people together, to do so meaningfully, effectively, efficiently, and productively. We want to get more meaningful feedback from more people in less time and with fewer meetings than what's possible using traditional outreach methods. We do that by inviting participants into a cloud-based software and a 3-step process. Through share, star, and discover steps, participants are asked to share ideas and perspectives. They're asked to consider and rate the thoughts of others, and they're asked to learn what's important to the group based on how the community has organized itself around the ideas that represent them as a whole. Anywhere where you can share a link, you can invite participants into an exchange. K-12 districts are using email lists, posting a link on social media, or even printing QR codes in print media. And once participants click that link, they're brought right into the exchange. A typical exchange starts with a background piece where a superintendent or project leader will share a short video or a short body of text, informing the process, informing the steps in the process, and also setting the norms for an exchange. Once through the background piece, participants are right into the share step. At the top of the mobile phone, there's an open-ended question, and underneath that there are thought bubbles where participants share their thought and also explain why that thought is important to them. Participants share thoughts independently and confidentially on a browser window or anywhere they are or happen to be on a mobile phone. There's no limit to the number of thoughts a participant can share, and once they're finished sharing their thought, they navigate themselves into the second step. In the star step, the thoughts of others are sliding in from the right, and participants are asked to consider and rate the thought based on how much resonance there is for that thought. It's important to note here there's no personal profiles attached to the thoughts that are shared, and that's important because thoughts will be rated based on the merit of the thought, not based on who's sharing the thought or what political group or position that thought or that person is aligned with. Participants can consider and rate a large number of thoughts in a short amount of time, and whether they realize it or not, they're becoming organized around the thoughts that represent them as a group. As they move to the discover step, they learn what's important to the group based on the starring patterns. They can also see right in the user experience where there are thoughts for which there's some contention. We call those hot topics. Depending on how the exchange is set up, participants can also see where their thought has landed in the group, how people have assigned stars to it, and how they're different or similar to the group in terms of starring patterns. What I'm showing you here is just a summary piece of the different steps in an exchange, from background through share, star, and discover. One of the questions we get asked a lot is what makes us different than traditional outreach methods. In a traditional community engagement strategy, a superintendent or district administration will pose a question or a set of questions out to a group. That group will then respond, giving all of their feedback to that same one person or small group of people, leaving the administration with the difficult task of deciding who to please, who to disappoint, and an even more difficult task of selling the action items, whatever they may be, back to that community and convincing them that the process in arriving at an outcome was fair. In a thought exchange, once an open-ended question is posed, community members not only share their response to that question, but they're asked to consider and rate responses from fellow community members. What's going on through this, what we call the value of many-to-many communication, is a tremendous amount of learning as the community is being exposed to perspectives that they may not have otherwise ever heard in some cases. As a legitimate member of the community, you're beginning to see where there is misperception, how big certain sentiments and ideas are, where there is contention among the group, and also getting a really great sense for how important certain issues or ideas are. Superintendents and administrative groups are part of the community and free to share their own thoughts in an exchange as well, allowing you to test hypotheses, validate hypotheses in many cases, and also present ideas to the group without coming across as somebody selling an action item going forward. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have by email. Feel free to send me an email at andy.krenz@thoughtexchange.com, and I'll get back to you just as soon as I can. Also happy to share other resources, customer testimonials, that sort of thing, if you're interested. So please reach out to me with any questions, and looking forward to speaking further.
I hope that was helpful in better understanding the tool itself and how it works, and kind of seeing firsthand. Most people do use it on their phone, but you can use it on a desktop or laptop. So, some potential uses again that we identified that it could be used. The communication, the board communication plan, board community conversations. If getting to a community conversation is a barrier, just actually getting there because work or the voices that we're not hearing from, you could pose certain questions. Each board member could, or you could come up with your own questions together that you want to pose. I think about the Core 24 committee. Once they get to a place where there's some recommendations, they could expand from their actual committee that's working on it, and then hear from a larger district representation. I think about district rebounding and that work that eventually we will engage in. Think about student voice and how we could capture. Pretty sure students are on their phones quite a bit. Might be a way to engage students and get some feedback from students in a really safe and anonymous way. And then as it was explained, it is okay and appropriate. So if we were engaging in a district conversation around, an upcoming bond or levy, and you wanted to engage and talk about accommodations for accessibility and put your own thought in there, and then it resonated with others and it starred or tracked well, that would be acceptable and okay. No one would know that it was you other than you, right? So there could be some discussion around how that would be used, but there are different ways to do it. Now there's also, I know one of the questions was, well, how do you know that somebody's not tracking and doing their own, and somebody's sabotaging them or putting a whole bunch of negative things on there? Well, we would have to have a whole bunch of people liking that and agreeing with that in order for that to happen. And it's the same way social media works. And if you watch social media and have that, how that tracks, there may be some that agree, but that just doesn't happen. And so what you see on other thought exchanges, if you've gone and watched on other districts, it just doesn't track well. The ideas that track well are the ones, it's solutions oriented. It's how you ask the questions, what you're asking, and these are solutions focused. So it's really how you engage and use the tool. So those are all things that we would get support and training on how to use it. And we can talk further about the pricing if that's the avenue we're interested in. There are many multiple uses, and that is where we are. Questions on that before we move forward?
I don't think I have any new questions or anything. Yeah, so.
Let's say, because thought exchange is the tool, the application. If we wanted, we meaning board, district, whoever wanted to post questions, we still have to generate that content on our own and put it out there and track it. Mm-hmm. But the tracking would be done in the tool.
In the tool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Levy, any questions? Any questions, Debbie?
Uh-oh.
Well, I'm going to have to go back and watch the video because I couldn't hear it at all when it was playing. But I guess my one question would be the 51K is for the cost of the actual system. What's our estimate for how much of support it would take on a district level for people to actually do keeping up with like monitoring or anything that has to do with that? Because there'd be an additional cost for, I mean, it'd be an additional to someone's job, correct?
Yes, so, well, that would depend on the number of exchanges is what they're called. And so it depends on frequency of what we're doing. So the type of setup that this quote would be, it would keep two separate rooms is the language. So the board would have its own room separate from the district. So all of the board thought exchanges would happen in one place and all of the district conversations would happen in another place. So it would be two separate places. So, but you could have as many conversations going on at once. So you could have a board conversation, thought exchange going on about the communications plan and one going on about the May community conversation, for example. While we have one on the district side going on about Core 24 and I don't know, a levy that's happening, let's say, all at the same time. So there could be 4 going on. But you can have as many users that are trained on how to monitor it. And that doesn't cost us. So, you know, Core 24 could be somebody assisting in the Core 24 committee, and then the levy could be somebody from capital planning. And so it doesn't have to just be communications team supporting it. The training is part of that fee, so that can happen when the training occurs. And it doesn't have to be all me or my team. It can happen, you know, when those training, we can identify who those people are. But this has filters for, just like social media has filters for language and all of those things that are happening, you know, that we don't want to see that are on there. So there's not as much monitoring that needs to happen as, even less monitoring that needs to happen than like Facebook, as far as foul language, or I don't know if that's what you're concerned about, monitoring or supporting.
I was just trying to get an idea of how much support would be needed from district staff, so thank you.
Yeah, I think it would depend with the frequency. If you're wanting to do like 12 at a time, we probably need to talk about that. But I think you would want to be intentional in your use, because the intention is actually to do something with the results so that you have an action plan that comes out of it. So I think,
and also to kind of not predict, but see the patterns of issues that are arising and be able to address proactively.
Which was the ask, right? So if there's quarterly tied to the community conversations, that would make sense that you could address at the same time as responding, or annually with your goal planning, or whatever that looks like. I mean, I think there would be a timeline associated with this.
Yeah. Anybody else? What do we need to do? Do we need to take action on this, or what's the next step?
So the next step would be, if we are ready to move forward, I can work with them on pricing and planning, and then we can bring it forward, because we would just follow regular board procedure. Okay. So the response to community questions, that's part of our communications plan as well. And so I would like to, maybe, do I need to turn Debbie to the screen? Would that be the best?
Probably.
Okay, sorry. So thank you, Maya, for reminding me this was part of our plan as well. So we, in our original communications plan, the language was a little bit different, because if you recall, we had not migrated to our new website. So it is a little bit different, because it's not to meet our board. The language is a little bit different. It's meet our directors, but we have started a new page under board meetings. We now have responses. So response to community questions. And then we just 52 minutes. You can see I've been working on this. We have now by date, we'll have the questions and then they'll expand. Did the graduation did the graduation date change because of snow days? I remembered that question in our last board meeting. It absolutely, the comprehensive date, comprehensive high schools did not change. The only graduation date that was impacted by our winter snow days was the early graduation at KPA. As you all recall, it moved a couple times because of the snow. And so we answered that and then linked to the actual page that is available on the district website and all high school websites, the information and the link so that you can get to the address of where the graduations are being held is there. So that will be our new normal for how we answer questions after board meetings. I think the only thing I wanted to point out is that, you know, oftentimes at the end of at the end of board meetings, during that period, not a lot of times, but sometimes there's comments, sometimes there's questions, and so just being clear about comments versus questions. Not everything is a question. And then making sure we're on the same page so that it's clear what is a comment and what is a question. And oftentimes, more often than not, we as an executive cabinet work really hard to address the person face to face before, immediately following the board meeting, and answer the question if we can. Sometimes people leave before we can get to them. In the same way, we know that people come to you at the dais before you get a chance to put your coat on. And so I'd like to clarify some processes or just make sure we're on the same page as if there's additional questions that need to be answered or addressed that we may not have heard at the microphone at the podium, if there's a process or a way that we can get those to us so that we're clear, because I think sometimes we might think that we've answered them. And yes, we can post the responses, but there also may be additional questions that came to you and we may not be aware because you may have been stopped at the dais or just outside the door or whatever that may be. So if we can be really clear about that process and timeline of how we might address this page and use this page so that our public is clear on how we're using this page.
I think one comment on this is that we want to do at least the minimum that we say we're going to do, right? Mm-hmm. So if they are coming to the podium and asking questions, we should at least be able to put that information out. Right. There may be other questions. I mean, I get emails all the time, you know, we may get calls. So we may not necessarily put that up, but okay. If it is posed to the public at large, we should put it up.
I just wanted to really have clarity around that, so yeah. I appreciate that.
I mean, that's my feeling. I don't know if anybody else have comments.
No, because I think that's it. I mean, we have the process through questions we get from the community conversations. We send those in. But right, someone comes up either to an agenda item or in the public comment, general public address section. That those are the ones that we wanted to see put up there on the sign.
Okay. So I think the only other question for me then would be if it's a board-specific question, it may be something I need to work with you all to answer. If it's not something that we can answer, yeah. You know, it may be something that you need to provide to me to be able to post on the website. Okay. So we'll just need to kind of work through that process as we have with other processes. Mm-hmm. And yeah,
so could we take a look at that verbiage on that site? I don't know, there was something unclear in that message. We don't have to do it now, but in terms of what gets posted, or maybe we should clarify, I think there are some exceptions there. If it has to go through Open Records Act, or if it involves particular specific employees, those questions will not be addressed there.
Right.
I don't know if we need to clarify it any further than what's up there.
Are you
People would
referring to the, I think the quote is on here.
Yes.
So,
Oh, is it there?
yeah, I think that, yeah, it's in quotation marks, so I'm gonna assume it's a
Yes, that's it. You're
copy
right.
and paste from the
Thank
website.
you. Perfect.
Mhm.
Yes, so, I mean, if, what is considered employee complaints, I don't know. If they're asking questions about specific employee, that I understand, but there may be issues like what happened with the bus driver, for example, that they come and talk to us about. They may not specifically mention the name, but
Appreciate that. So this is also about our process and what process actually is most appropriate. So context does matter. I think you answered the first part of the question about what is considered a complaint against them. Well, all sorts of iterations of that. I think we generally have a general understanding of what constitutes a complaint. But if there's a question regarding something that happened on a transportation or on a bus or regarding a family, this is a perfect opportunity for us to talk about what are the options and opportunities that are available. First, ideally, we would want our families to have had a conversation. The assumption is that they would have spoken at the lowest possible level. And by lowest, meaning the closest to the point where the problem or the concern has started. So if it's a classroom concern and it's regarding a classroom professional, teacher, or paraeducator or student, then the first, logically, we would want the first communication to go to the school. And that would be, I think, the expectation for all of us to say, when you had a conversation with someone at school, how did that go? Or if you have not, please contact the local school principal. That's one example. But there, as we know, there are hundreds of examples. So using the transportation, I've had at least 3 conversations I know this week regarding transportation. And if I'm not having that conversation with a family member, I can also address it by making sure that appropriate staff have that topic of discussion, and then to make sure that I am following up as needed. We've had at least 2 examples this week. So my question would be, how do we determine what constitutes a comment that goes on the website versus, this is another response, another method. I'd say the most important method is going straight to the source. Going back to Debbie's question as well, we don't want to overload the process, but I think we want to make sure we're communicating at the lowest possible level first. This for, I think, as you mentioned, those topics that are broad, during the board meetings. And I also, we're gonna have to play with this. We're gonna have to massage it, and we'll work through it.
Right, because I didn't want to make a list of here's the things that it's not going to include.
Exactly.
That can just keep going on and on and on.
Sure.
And we can be more clear about, we're going to answer questions here that are asked either of the board or during board presentations or something like that.
Sure.
Something that we can help people understand rather than a list of, don't expect to find this here for, because we could add 6 or 7 more things onto this list of what we've already been asked. And so rather, like, if you have a question that doesn't, or it's more like a question you've asked at a board meeting that doesn't already have an answer within the page or wherever, here's where that question is.
yeah, and that process of communication, we probably need to put that on our website, what is the process? Because yes, there is a expectation that the board should be responding to everything that goes wrong. And sometimes they don't go to the principal or the building, they come straight to the board. So I think that would be a good process for them to understand. What is it? What do we expect as a district that they follow? It's a communication process.
I think that's real simple for us to do, and I think most organizations, and I use the example often, I drive a Ford Focus, and when my brakes go bad, while I might want to go speak with the CEO of Ford and let the CEO know just how upset I am at the fact my brakes aren't working, they're going to say, you probably need to go to Firestone or to the company to fix your brakes. And that's the question, I think, for all of us, is how do we help our community, our constituents, those around the table, what's the why behind our concern? So I want to be solution-oriented, and sometimes that's the easiest way if we're wanting to solve a problem. Or am I bringing this to you because I want to, for lack of a better word, I'm not saying this happens all the time, but if I'm bringing this to you because I want to create a problem. Now, I'm not saying that happens all the time, but I know that that is sometimes the part of the purpose of communication. We have to look at the purpose. Solving a problem, let's try and solve it at the most local level. We can help remind each and every person that comes to us.
I appreciate how that's written out in policy 4312, particularly the procedure where it speaks specifically to, when we talk about employee complaints, they should be first directed toward that person, and that the community member should be directed to that employee. So it can happen at the closest level, and then there are steps after that. It goes to the supervisor, there's a form that they complete, and it moves to the next piece. So there is a clear process that's outlined in procedure 4312 that I think would be great for us to continue to share. I know we share it when people come to us about an employee and say, well, first place to start is where that individual works. So work with the supervisor and begin to work from there. And often they're able to address the situation right at that level.
So we had a number of videos that were part of our communication plan, and you have the link I can send this to you. We won't watch another video, just watching our time. But this video is about the role of the board, and it featured Ross and Denise, and that was sent out today. I know Denise gave her approval. I don't know if you had a chance during the workday to watch it yet, Ross.
Not yet. I'll watch it tonight.
I know it's hard to watch yourself
I know.
on video.
I know you don't watch myself.
But I think it turned out well.
Okay.
And so I don't know that we want to put it in this month's board newsletter, but it might be something for next month, depending on what you want to do for content. But that's the final board video for this communication plan, and so appreciate you taking the time to do that. And any changes or feedback, just let Casey and I know, and we're happy to do that. And then, again, as I mentioned earlier, we have begun doing some SWOT analysis already on our communication plan and other things that are happening. It's spring, it's time for new, and so it's time to start thinking about going into next year. And so one of the things that we said we would do as part of our plan is gather feedback from staff and community members before and after the implementation of the revised communication plan. And on page 10 specifically, we called this out in the assessment and accountability of the communications plan, and that's on our website. Yeah. And so what I would like to propose is bringing back to you in May at our May communications plan update a draft for your review of a survey that we could send out. We could put it in the May newsletter perhaps, deploy it in the May newsletter and on the website, through social media, perhaps on Thought Exchange if we're ready and moving forward that quickly. I think we could make that happen. And then remind people in the June newsletter, but give them a nice lengthy time and multiple modalities of promoting it and participating and giving feedback specifically on the communication plan so that we can work together to develop the 1920 communications plan, because I think it would be really important and nice to have that developed by July-ish and ready to go before the school year starts. And that would align to our district strategic communications plan, and that's our timeline for ours as well. And if we're doing those together this year, they would be nicely aligned time-wise, and we can hit the ground running for next school year. So with your permission, I'd like to move on that and bring that back to you. Okay. And if there's anything specific that you want to know or ask, but it'll be based and rooted in what we've done and what can move us forward. So that's where I'll start, and then I'll take changes from you all. And then the next topic I would like to go back to is the final, the fourth May community conversation, the last of the four for this year. So they're May 9th and 11th. We have the locations, thank you Karen for securing our locations. On the 9th we're at Kent Lake and Kentwood Libraries. And on the 11th we are at Fairwood. In their meeting room. And so we have the same outreach opportunities, so we can do flyers, the video updated, social media, the April newsletter, website. Of course, I'm sure you guys always do a wonderful job promoting it at the board meetings. I'm mentioning it several times throughout the meeting and in your comments, inviting people to that. I wonder about at the meetings, and Ross, I really appreciate you mentioned this just a few minutes ago, the repeat topics and questions. We had a few of those at the last one in particular, and that may have been because they were kind of close together the last time, but maybe taking a device with you so that if anything does come up, you can pull up the Q&A that we have posted on the website, because then you would have those Q&A right in front of you to go back to and refer back to. That might be helpful to help people navigate to those, show them those, have the answers right in front of you. That might be something you want to try this time. I don't know if they'll have the same questions. It's been a few months now since this one, so but also we'll have another board meeting's worth of questions that we can have posted as well, so that new section you can show also, so that could be there. And then the timeline I have posted here, regardless of how many questions you get, I'm assuming, using the same kind of timeline before the Wednesday after, you can get us questions, and then by the following Friday, so the 24th, which is the day before Memorial Day, the long day, depending on how many questions we have, we can work to get those answers up and posted. So with that, there is one new and different thing about these community conversations, and that would be Mr. Austin Freeman. So I think now is the appropriate and good time to talk about his participation in the board community conversations. Austin?
So, I last week had the opportunity to meet with members on the KSD communications team about, just put it out there, still working out the details, but includes a video as my role as student representative. So it'll include, hopefully, instead of actually just following, I guess, the daily school day of me, we're actually hoping to go to at least 2 different high schools and do kind of more quick interactions with the students who are on student leadership advisory. So it's not just me, and we can also use that as a promotion to promote students to apply to the student representative role. And that would also be in conjunction with hopefully a possible social media takeover by me of the KSD social media, and kind of focus on, hopefully I'll have the opportunity to go to different events throughout the week in addition to daily school. I was hoping those would be on the same week as the board community conversations, but they aren't. Maybe with a lot of planning we could maybe move it up to that week of May 9th and 11th. That would also, I looked at the dates earlier today, that would also put all of that, the possibility of including that in the May board newsletter, because I believe that's going to come 2 weeks after the board community conversation. So all of that stuff could then go in the new board newsletter. I am open to joining you for all 3 ? depending on my schedule, or one or two of the community conversations. My only slight concern is, and that was conversations I believe we've had earlier, and that is advertising me as being someone who hosts the board, who hosts one of these community conversations. So that way, one of you wouldn't have to do two. And I say that because I've had to clarify to some people, yes, I'm the student representative of the board, but I'm not officially a voting member of the board. And I've had to clarify that like multiple times to people because they just want me to do these certain things. And I have to clarify that. And so I say that because, you know, since I'm not elected, therefore that's why I don't attend executive sessions. That's why I do not vote. You know, I had to clarify that to multiple people to explain that my main role is to offer perspectives and kind of focus on dialogue. And I kind of fear if we said join board members, Maya and Austin, at a community conversation and just me and her showed up, that would cement the idea that I am an official board member and that I can vote on these things, you know? So that's my slight concern. But I think that's really kind of all I had to say, so.
It's totally up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, give it a respect. Aside from the first ones that we hosted,
Yeah.
it is more of a chance to just talk to the community about anything.
Mhm.
So even about what you just said,
Yeah.
your role on the board, why we're here, why you want to do it.
Mhm.
It's we just talk about whatever, you know,
Yeah.
outside, no agenda, no
Mhm.
having to talk
Yeah.
for 3 minutes or nothing like that. And so the idea is, you know, I think feel free to come along for whichever one you like.
Mm-hmm.
No, we usually split them up now, so we don't have to do double duty anymore. So that'd be helpful, but it's up to you.
Mm-hmm.
It really is just about having that conversation. So it's the opportunity to talk to anyone who comes and says, yep, I'm on the board, I don't vote, you know, wasn't
Yeah.
elected, but I offer my perspective on anything and everything.
Yeah.
As well as whatever we talk about there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Two of them are on one night, so if you appeared at Kentwood for the first hour and at Kent Lake for the second hour, and then Fairwood the next Saturday, I mean, you know, if you wanted to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think you should replace a board member. I think there should be two board
Yeah.
members because that's what happened with us last time. You got stuck in traffic and you were 40 minutes late.
That's right.
So I think we need to have two board members there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Yeah, I think, Austin, you know, whatever makes you feel comfortable. And I know you come to a couple of the meetings as a constituent, so, and I always appreciate your viewpoint. I mean, it doesn't have to be that we have to have an answer to everything.
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, most often we come back and we try to get the answer.
Yeah.
We don't always have the answer. So, yeah, however way you'd like to work that, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
We'd love to see you there
Right.
in the meeting.
So Maya,
Yes.
one thing that I think would be great maybe to think about for even next year would be an opportunity that maybe as board members, we could go with our board student representative and maybe even host some town halls or some sort of communication or conversation at maybe different high schools as another opportunity to maybe get some of those student voices that we haven't had in the past.
You mean during the day, Deb, while the students?
Yeah, so maybe like, you know, late in the school day or sometime during the day to be able to, you know, think about that for maybe next year. How could we use or help get more of that student voice as another opportunity? Because it's often a voice that doesn't attend our community conversations, but they are definitely a big part of our community.
Yeah.
I think, Melissa, having the communication plan really ahead of time is going to be great, because those of us who work, we can plan well ahead of time and have it on our calendar, you know, if it's during the day, because that requires planning. And so the sooner we get those dates, the better.
And I think the bridge of having a student representative on the board this school year and planning for next school year is gonna help tremendously as well. And so that planning is happening now for next year too. And so that piece, took time to build after the policy was approved last spring. And so I think it's all coming together. And so I'm really excited for next year for all of those reasons. So thank you for that. Is there anything, I believe we talked a little bit last time about any changes, and I didn't hear any, so we'll continue with the promotions, but if there's any additional support or information that you need from our team to recruit, or to promote the communication, the conversations, please let us know, but we definitely will promote it in this month's newsletter, in our New and the Blue newsletters, and all of our social media, and so we'll help get the word out. I think the gap between this one and the last one is different, and so I'm excited to see if the turnouts will be different as well. And then you have your data for the videos. There wasn't much change in the average views per recording or the average minutes. They slightly went down just a little bit with the March videos for the work sessions and board meeting. And then the March newsletters, you can see the open rates went up. We had an uptick in our board newsletters. We have been reaching out, and we have been putting out some additional ways for people to sign up for newsletters, and so that's why you see a jump in the total number of community members. It's about, no, I can't do math, sorry. It's about 1,500. So that's a result of just working diligently to help people sign up and putting it in different places. And that's all communities, that's all newsletters. So it's not just the board newsletter, but that's across the board. That's safety, that's promises made, promises kept, that's New in the Blue. And so it's okay that we had a bounce rate that was a little bit high because a bunch of those were new. So, and then continuing on to upcoming dates, events, and celebrations. Just wanted I included some things a little bit differently than maybe you've seen in the past months. It's a busy time, and we're in that, Monday we hit the 2 months to graduation. So budget season, spring, everything going on. And so also May, we have, it's Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, it's Jewish American Heritage Month, we have our National Teacher Appreciation Week in May, we have National School Nurse Day, and Give Big Day is also that day. Cat Schools Foundation is doing a big drive that day. They're participating, as well as I'm sure a number of our other organizations that we work with and that support our students and families. Of course, Mother's Day is in May, and just many, many things. So I wanted to include some other things that weren't just necessarily work-related, but important to celebrate just all of those voices that we began our evening with, and thinking about keeping those in mind. So that is the communications plan update. If there's any other questions, that's all I have for you.
The only thing I have is I think we'll need to figure out who's going to do the conversation this way, because I remember Karen and I have to do this exercise at the last minute and juggle and see who's going to do and go where. So we should probably plan those kinds of things too in advance, so that we have it in our calendar and we're there.
Yes.
And, so that's the only comment I have. Anybody else? Anything? Debbie, any thoughts? No. So thank you.
Good, thanks.
Thank you so much for everything, and we loved your
Yeah, I know.
demonstration. Thank you. Sharon. All right, well, thank you all for staying, and we wish you a good night. We are adjourned. are going to an executive session at 7:30. For 30 minutes, for approximately 30 minutes, to discuss with legal counsel representing the district litigation or potential litigation to which the district is likely to become a party.
Debbie?
Question, is Aslan
Can you
going
hear
to
me?
be involved in the graduations? Is he going to be up on the
Yes.
stage?
Okay.
or-
You're going to call in the conference phone?
Well, he
Yes.
is great.
Okay.
I know he is
So-
I'm going to
graduating.
shut you
So
down.
hand it to him.
All right, thank you.
No, he doesn't have
Okay.
to be there for his own, but